Classes with no teachers are here. The first teacherless classes in the UK are being introduced at a private school in London. It's only a pilot so far for GCSE students. All core subjects will be taught by AI-driven adaptive learning programs. It's a complete transformation away from teachers to student-centred education. There will be no teachers. Each student will be able to work at exactly their own pace. No need to slow down or speed up in order to stay with the rest of the class. Each student will have a dedicated personalised learning pathway adapting to their exact needs. Learning will take place in small groups with no more than 20 students in one class, and learning coaches will be on hand to support this process. The coaches will have access to specific data from each student that will allow them to identify those that need extra help and provide targeted one-on-one support to address specific needs. The scheme sounds really, really good. I think its potential is massive, and it's really ideal for non-traditional learners, people who don't learn well in the traditional classroom environment, people who aren't the kind of typical average student. In principle, all of this sounds like a great idea to me, but there are some people who are really against it. My own view is that artificial intelligence is going to change the world in a very short time frame, within the next few years. I've been giving some thought as to how this is going to change economics, and the conclusion I'm coming to is that the global economy is going to completely change in the next few years. By 10 years, we'll be living in a completely different world. Conventional economic theory will become outdated and obsolete. It's interesting because I keep making my videos and talking about issues as if this AI tsunami isn't right around the corner. AI just doesn't have the profile it deserves, given the radical changes that are thundering towards us. Hardly anyone mentioned it in the election. I'm definitely going to be speaking about this more in terms of how economics will change. In a way, looking at the negatives might be argued as pointless, a bit like looking at a beach full of people enjoying themselves and saying, isn't it a shame that the tide's going to come in and spoil all these people's enjoyment? However, we can pick up a couple of points that people do make. The first one relates to the idea that this may be a cost-cutting exercise, that schools will switch to AI learning because it's cheaper than employing teachers. This is probably 100% true. Learning is basically going to become free. Interestingly, this isn't being introduced in a school that's struggling to afford to pay teachers. It's in a private school with fees between £22,000 and £29,000 a year. It's being introduced because it is the future, and it is almost certainly going to prove to be the case that standards go up because each student will be taught at exactly the right level for them. The cost point is really interesting. Free education tailored to each individual student will be available throughout the world. This means that children in the poorest countries will have access to the best education available, the same education that's available to students at high-paying private schools. This is amazing. A second negative point is the taking out of the human element from education. For example, Chris McGovern of the Campaign for Real Education and a former advisor to Downing Street has said that the problem with AI and the computer screen is that it's a machine and it's inert. So you're straight away dehumanizing the process of learning, taking away those interpersonal skills and the interaction between pupils and teacher. There's no doubt that technology is changing the way that humans relate to each other, but it's a tide that can't be stopped. My mum used to tell me about when she was a child, how the family would sit round the table and listen to the radio together. That must have been a really nice experience to share with each other. Technology has pretty much abolished that. Now people sit round the table looking at their own phones. I personally think the advantages of mobile phones, these incredible handheld computers, outweigh the negatives. But whatever your attitude, there's no going back with technology. The tide is coming in and we can do nothing about it. I do think that human contact and connection is really important. And I think it's possible to look at interesting economic models when no technology is used. I'm personally quite attracted by the idea of living in a small community where people share resources and explore deeper meanings of being a human. I definitely want to explore this more in my videos. But for the moment, we live in the world that we do. And in this regard, although there will be some economic disruption from this radical change in education, there probably will not be the need for so many teachers. There may be some pain in this adjustment, but overall, I think this is a positive development. This made me think of an experiment that took place in India by an academic, Sugata Mitra, reported in The Guardian back in 2016. Mitra claimed that children in the rural slums of India, many of who had never seen a computer in their lives, had, when left with computers in kiosks, taught themselves on various advanced topics with no adult assistance. His work does seem truly amazing, but the article questions why Mitra, who is an education expert, is not more of a household name. This seems to be one of the most recent articles mentioning his work, an article from 8 years ago. My theory would be that it's just too challenging to the establishment, too radical. As Pink Floyd said, "We don't need no education, we don't need no thought control." This raises the idea of an education system that suppresses individuality and enforces conformity. I think there are strong arguments that this song actually reflects a fundamental truth, that the education system is set up to support the capitalist system and existing class structures. The education system doesn't do anything to really challenge inequality. AI perhaps allows us to break free from rigid, standardized teaching, giving every single person the best chance to achieve their fullest potential. This also makes me think of Jacques Rancière, the French philosopher, who wrote an amazing book called The Ignorant Schoolmaster: 5 Lessons in Intellectual Emancipation. Rancière's central thesis is that the best education occurs when the teacher, rather than being a source of knowledge, acts as a facilitator who allows students to discover and learn on their own. He highlighted the case of Jacques, a 19th century educator that taught students subjects he didn't know about and in a language he didn't speak. Rancière's work emphasizes equality and has influenced me greatly in terms of my politics, economics, and even my artwork. I love this idea, the idea that intellectual emancipation happens when the student is treated as an equal, capable of independent thought. I think that AI adaptive learning programs will help to bring this about. The idea of kind of removing that hierarchy between the teacher and the student. Interestingly, Rancière wasn't saying that there's no role for teachers. Rather, I think he identified that the teacher's role is less about delivering content and more about facilitating self-directed learning. The facilitator may still play a really important role in education, but the role would be more about inspiring students to activate their own learning skills. Now, I don't want to minimize how scary this might be for teachers. At best, their job is going to dramatically change. At worst, many of them may lose their jobs. This is going to happen in many different industries, and we do need to start discussing more about what society and the economy is going to look like. But my own view is that teacherless AI classrooms are the future, and overall, I think from an economic and personal well-being perspective, AI education offers exciting opportunities. I hope you found this information useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.